okay. I'll talk about 3 models of Gellular automata, and 2 models are based on the joint work with Taiga Hongu. So I show his name here. So let me talk about our motivation briefly. So eventually we want to construct programmable soft material made of gel or gel materials. And so programmable soft material or so-called smart material or intelligent material, which have abilities like self-organization, pattern formation, or self-repair. This is what we want to make, examples of what we want to make in future. So this is self-organizing bypass vessel. So this is a vessel which with some substances inside the vessel that blocks fluid of blood. And so we want to eventually make this kind of gel material that can self-organize bypass vessel like this. And we also want to make smart contact lens. And these are some critical studies of pattern formation by cellular automata. So in this study, 3D patterns are formed by set of rules. And in this study, force is put to the initial model, and then stress of each cell is computed. And eventually, cells having small stress are decomposed or disappear, and these final models are constructed. So we want to realize these kinds of soft materials, smart materials using gel materials. But this study is purely theoretical. So according to our motivation, we defined 3 models and analyzed properties of those models, particularly computational power such as universality. The first model is based on decomposable or composable walls. So in this model, cells are surrounded by artificial walls made of gel. And each cell is filled with a solution having some chemical substances. And among the chemical substances, we have decomposer, and the decomposer molecules are generated. Then a hole is made in this wall, and then 2 solutions are mixed like this. We also prepare molecules called composer. And if the solution produces composer molecules, then the wall is reconstructed again, and 2 cells are separated. And we studied this model of cellular automata, and so this is this lists possible wet implementation of walls. So decomposer walls can be implemented by this solvable gel, and we actually made pure DNA gels and DNA cross-linked acrylamide gel. And we also use shrinkable gel as a valve. And so if a valve shrinks, then a hole is made. So in this way, you can implement decomposable walls. On the other hand, composable walls can be implemented by swellable gel as a valve. And swellable gels can be made by DNA cross-linked acrylamide bis gel. And we actually made this kind of gel in 2014. And also swellable gel can be made by pure DNA gels. And so recently, Okumura implemented shrinkable gel and also swellable gel using pure DNA gel. So these two kinds of gels can be actually implemented. So I think both decomposable and composable walls can be implemented in future. And these are the theoretical results in the first model. The computational universality was proved in 2014 by construction of propagating signals. And in order to make propagating signals, we used 5 kinds of walls and 5 kinds of initial solutions. And so we published the paper in 2014, but later it was found that 5 kinds of walls and initial solutions are not sufficient. So this construction was later corrected to use 6 kinds of walls and 6 kinds of initial solutions. But anyway, if we can implement propagating signals, and we can construct Morita's rotary elements. And then following Morita's construction, we can implement any reversible Turing machines by this kind of cellular automata. And later, Katsunobu Imai and Wang and constructed Margulas neighborhood. So by this method, they can directly simulate ordinary cellular automata. So universality can be obtained. So this is about the first model. Then I'd like to talk about our second model, which is more realistic. And the second model is based on free diffusion. And the second model is supposed to be implemented by gel capsules or porous gels having holes like this. So this is the actual construction of porous gel. And we put solutions in these holes, and we can actually implement Gellular automata. So solutions are filled inside a capsule or a hole. And in the solutions, we prepare molecules with different diffusion constants. Actually, we assume 2 kinds of molecules, signal molecules and state molecules. And inside a solution, inside a capsule, so these 2 kinds of molecules diffuse freely, fastly. On the other hand, here are gel walls. So across the gel walls, signal molecules are fast. That is, signal molecules can diffuse across the gel walls with medium diffusion constants. On the other hand, state molecules are very slow in diffusion. So actually, it cannot diffuse, they cannot diffuse across gel walls. So state molecules implement states of each cell, and signal molecules diffuse from one cell to neighboring cells to tell the state of each cell. So the second model is actually asynchronous cellular automata with additional constraints. And here are the additional constraints, Boolean totality and non-camouflageness. Boolean totality means that state transition do not depend on the direction or the number of cells. And non-camouflageness means that state transitions do not contain the current state of the cell making a transition. Yeah, let me explain these conditions in detail. Assume that we have these cells. The center cell is in state A. And the Boolean totality means that state transitions do not depend on the direction or the number of cells. So, for example, the conditions such as there are two C's cannot be allowed. So on the other hand, these conditions are allowed in state transitions, such as there are B and C, or there is C, but there is no D. So these conditions are allowed. So this is Boolean totality. And of course, state transitions do not depend on the direction. On the other hand, non-camouflageness means that state transitions do not contain the current state of the cell making a transition. So, for example, if the center cell is in state A, then the state transition cannot contain this condition. There is no A. Yeah, this is because if a neighboring cell is in state A, then it transmits the information about A. But this center cell also emits the information of state A. So the center cell cannot distinguish between the signals made by itself and the signals made by the neighboring cell. So this is why we impose this condition on state transitions. And this is some theoretical results in the second model. So we proved computational universality, and this proof is based on construction of precise S automata K and E. So basically, this construction is similar to construction using rotary elements. And in addition to computational universality, we studied self-stability in this second model, and actually constructed these algorithms that satisfy self-stability. So let me explain what is self-stability. So self-stability is a property of distributed systems in general. And here, Dolev defines self-stability like this. A self-stabilizing system is a system that can automatically recover following the occurrence of transient falls. So the idea is to design systems that can be started in an arbitrary state and still converge to a desired behavior. So for example, this is the case of maze solving. And the cellular automata are trying to solve a maze. But if during the during the process, if some error occurs in a cell, but still the cellular automata can recover from the fault, from the error, and construct a solution of the maze. And this self-stability corresponds to self-repair in the case of smart materials. So cellular automata or algorithms implemented by cellular automata satisfy this self-stability property, then the implemented smart material will have the ability of self-repair, self-reconstruction. So that is why we think self-stability is very important. And in order to prove self-stability, we have to show that transient fault can be automatically recovered. And in order to prove that transient faults can be recovered, we showed these two steps. So in any fair run from any configuration, a target configuration appears in finite steps. So this is the first condition. And the second condition is that target configurations can make only a transition to another target configuration. So target configuration is the configuration that can be achieved eventually. So the first condition says that from any initial configurations, a target configuration can be reached. And if a target configuration is reached, then state transitions can only produce target configurations. And so this is how self-stability is proven in general. And for showing self-stability, asynchrony and fairness are fundamental. So self-stability is usually a property on distributed systems that are asynchronous. So that is why we are working on asynchronous cellular automata. And let me show some examples. So this is solving a maze. So this is start and end. And as you see, we eventually obtain a single path from start cell to the end cell. So this is what we implemented. Sorry. So I just replayed the movie again. And the algorithm, interestingly, the algorithm works even if there are many starting points and many ending points. So let me show you. So signals are first sent from the end points to the starting points. And then oops. Sorry, something. Okay. Okay, sorry. So you can find this path, and this path. So 3 paths are constructed. And this is a very specific example. If there are no walls, but still the algorithm works. But it takes some time. Okay, so here is one path from start to end, and here is another path from a start to an ending point. And this is an algorithm for achieving distance to coloring. So distance to coloring means that as neighboring cells should have different colors, and also neighboring cells of a neighboring cell should have different colors. So let me show. So okay, as you can see, so here white, and white appears here, but it's more than distance 2. So we can achieve distance coloring by this algorithm. And this is spanning tree constructions. So this is root. So now eventually a spanning tree beginning from this root is constructed. And this is a Hamiltonian path. So it takes a long time, but this algorithm eventually constructs a Hamiltonian path that connects these yellow points. So this is a Hamiltonian path. So let me finally explain the third model, which we are working currently. So we want to achieve more functionality. So the second model does not allow directionality, but in the third model, we introduced directionality, and we are going to 3 dimensions. So we abandon Boolean totality, but still we think we can implement directionality in various ways, such as electric or magnetic fields or chemical gradients or emission of light. So we can physically or chemically implement directionality. So that's why we introduced directionality into the model. And we mainly focus on path formation in 3 dimensions in this model. So this is our going work. So supervised learning of conjunctive normal form circuits in 3 dimensions. So we put the direction from input nodes to output nodes or output cells. And we implemented 2 versions in which in the first version, input-output examples are given one by one. On the other hand, in the second version, which we are currently working, all input-output examples are given at once. So for this input-output, for giving input-output, all input-output examples, so we prepare different signal for each input-output example. And this second version is shown to be self-stable. So let me briefly explain. So these are input cells, and these are output cells. And this example constructs XOR circuit like this. So the circuit is constructed from output to input, and eventually XOR circuit is constructed. And this is another example constructing half adder. We are not trying to construct full adder, but still we are not successful. So this is an example of half adder. So here 3 inputs, and we have 2 outputs. Let me show. Here, so eventually half our circuit is constructed. So red cell denotes AND nodes, and these yellow cells express OR nodes. Okay, so here are some issues. So we want to work on actual implementation of directionality. But also we want to weaken directionality So eventually we want to go from the third model to the second. And we are currently working on constructing various kinds of paths in 3 dimensions, such as matching path and multiple circuits. And eventually we want to find some concrete applications by soft materials. So thank you very much. That's all for what I want to say.
Thank you very much. Very impressive talk. Do you have any comments or questions? Please go ahead.
Just a quick question. In the beginning, you mentioned the first model that you had some DNA gel.
Mm.
And I was a bit surprised because it's like, DNA is the molecule for storing information, but you seem to use it structurally. So how was that possible that you didn't need to design your own protein structure to do something? You just used the DNA gel.
Yeah, DNA molecules are very useful. So it can construct various kinds of shapes or structures by only using DNA molecules.
Okay.
So maybe you have heard the phrase DNA origami or DNA tiles and so on. So by carefully designing DNA sequences, that is base sequences of DNA, then DNA molecules, that's a linear molecule, but they hybridize in various ways and construct various structures.
Is that more predictable than protein folding?
Yes, of course, because protein folding is still very difficult to predict. Okay. On the other hand, base pairing of DNA molecules are quite simple and predictable. And so with very high concentrations, DNA molecules construct net structures, and so it can produce gel materials. And so hybridization can be controlled. So you can actually control the structure of net structures of gels. So recently you can implement shrinkable gel. So if you put if you put DNA molecules as signals into DNA gels, then DNA gel can shrink or swell. So in that way, you can implement the valves so that holes can be opened or closed by DNA molecules. So those controlling DNA molecules are produced in solutions. So that is so at least theoretically, you can imagine such cellular automata by only using DNA molecules.
Oh, thank you.
Any others? May I have a question about the 3D model? Do you have any configuration? I see no configuration in 3D models. So how to implement 3D version of Gellular Automata?
Configurations?
I mean, there is some yellow point or something I see in 2D models, but in 3D models, then can be seems like empty. Yeah.
Right. So in this example, so let me. So in this example, so these input cells and these output cells are specific. So they should be specified from outside. But other cells are uniform.
Mm-hmm. I see. So, I understood. Yeah.
So from this uniform structures, so the circuits are generated. Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
In the three-dimensional model, you employ AND or OR gate. I am just wondering because why don't you employing a asynchronous gate? Synchronization seems to be quite difficult, isn't it?
Sorry, so we assume that the circuits work synchronously. So the cellular automata are asynchronous, but the circuits are assumed to work synchronously. So signals into the circuits are fed. So in other kinds of signals. So we assume that if circuits are constructed, then it's a kind of electrical circuit, and so electrical signals can be fed into the circuits. That's our assumption. So only the construction is asynchronous.
Yeah, please.
Just one short question for understanding. You mentioned in one network that it is fulfilling a Hamiltonian path. Did you mean Hamiltonian principle-based path, or what was the meaning of Hamiltonian in that context?
Yeah, in the sense of graph theory. So Hamiltonian path is a path that visits all the nodes once and return to the original node. Yeah. So sorry. So I should have explained that point.
Thank you. Thank you. It's clear now.
Okay. So I can show you, but so sorry. So originally we have these yellow cells that denote nodes of a graph, and we want to eventually construct a path that visit these yellow cells just once. Okay. So thank you very much.
So this is the shortest path, yeah?
Not shortest path, maybe not shortest path.
No, it's not shortest, it's just that it is going once through each, exactly once through each of the nodes.
So the path visits each node exactly
avoiding a repetition. Yeah, now I understand. Okay, thank you.